Shalom, welcome to this week's Living Torah, and before we get going, we're going to be in the book of Philippians. I received an email from someone yesterday saying they don't remember anyone ever going through and teaching on Philippians. Well, I can tell you I've never done that. I've read the book, of course, but and I've read a couple of books regarding Philippians and some commentary. There's a lot of verses that are, that kind of roll off of our tongue pretty easy that come out of Philippians. Interesting enough, years ago, this is ancient history, our daughter was in a private school in Tucson, Arizona, and they actually, the assignment that year, it was a Christian school, was to memorize the book of Philippians, which, there's only 4 chapters, but that's still a lot of memorization. And she did that, and I don't know if she could quote it today, maybe not, but a lot of it is still there. So it's a fascinating book, and I think we're going to get a lot out of it. First of all, I have not put this on the website yet, but next weekend, that would be the 21st of December, I think it is, I will be in DeRidder, Louisiana. So if you're anywhere in the DeRidder, Louisiana area, you're probably lost. So you need somewhere to go on Shabbat. I'll be with Joe and Heather Amon. Wonderful, wonderful couple. Looking forward to spending some time with them and some other friends that were with us in Israel, Out of Ashes Ministry. And they also have a Facebook site. I think it's it's Facebook. They do the live Facebook Live thing, so I guess that we'll be doing that on Shabbat too. So if you're on Facebook, please go there. You can be a part of that day. Looking forward to it. So the book of Philippians is a very fascinating book in that Rav Shaul, is the Apostle Paul, is once again in prison. And now, this guy, as I was thinking about this a little while ago, Rav Shaul, if he showed up at most Messianic congregations or at most churches, probably would not have been allowed in the door. Why? Because he's a criminal. He spent a lot of time in jail, and so he probably wouldn't have been welcome. His doctrine definitely would not have been welcome by many. In Messianic circles today, Rav Shaul has become, I think this is maybe, we're getting through this, but I do remember a time a few years ago that just the mention of Paul was sent people into orbit, which, he's misunderstood. Peter himself, Shimon Kefa, says the writings of Shaul are difficult. They're hard to understand, especially by those that are unlearned. And so if a person does not have any understanding of the Torah, how can they possibly understand what Paul is talking about? Of course, they're going to twist that for their own good. Now, Marcion, going back about 1800 years, Marcion decided that he would, this is prior to Constantine, so he was the first Gentile leader of the congregation, the Kahal, in Jerusalem. And he had a very interesting theology, to say the least. He came up with a theology that there were 2 gods, the God of the quote-unquote Old Testament and the God of the quote-unquote New Testament. And so the God of the New Testament had overcome the God of the Old Testament because, that God of the Old Testament was this harsh, taskmaster kind of a God. And so this lovey-dovey kind of God of the New Testament had overcome. And so Marcion started propagating this doctrine, and then he kind of came up with his own Bible. He took out, of course, the Old Testament was done away with because the God of that Old Testament was done away with. And then he took the writings of Paul. He liked Paul. Took the book of Luke, I think it was, pulled out a few verses that were, in some way favorable to the Jews. So his Bible ended up as the books of Paul and a little bit of the Gospel of Luke. Well, of course, we would say today that that's heresy. No one would ever decide to live something like that. Truth is, most of Constantinian Christianity today is following in the footsteps of Marcion. The pendulum swing the other way is that for those that come into this walk of Torah, well, Paul becomes the enemy, the arch enemy of anyone walking in Torah. Absolutely not. Paul never at any time said anything against Torah. For many Jews today that I've talked to, I remember talking to a Jewish friend of mine years ago, and they said, it's not, and they use Jesus, of course, because using Yeshua opens up some other doors, but they said, it's not really Jesus that I have a problem with, it's Paul. And I finally looked at one Jewish friend of mine, and I said, well, the reason you have a problem with Paul, Shaul, is because you're reading his writings like a Christian would. And that kind of stunned him a little bit. And he looked at me and says, you're probably right. I said, if you would read the writings of Rav Shaul, who is a Torah scholar, who was familiar with the writings of that day, writings that are still being used today, if you would read those words from a Jewish standpoint, you would understand them. And that's what the transition was for me. There's still things that Shaul talks about that it's like, okay, I kind of got this, but I don't got this, because it is difficult to understand for somebody that grew up like I did, Southern Baptist, then I was in a Nazarene church, Assembly of God, Vineyard. You have those things kind of ingrained in you. And what is ingrained in you in those early formative years, both physically and spiritually? Because it was, 1986, I was 28 years old when I came to a faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the person that I was introduced, Jesus. So, that was my spiritual infancy. And a lot of what I am today was set in place by those early years. The man right over my right shoulder that you see, that's not a picture of my father, or he's not even related to me, but his name was John Faust, and I met him in a Nazarene church. A lot of what I am, who I am today, is because of that man. And so, but these are things that, John and his wife Marie, we'd go over to their house and we'd eat bacon and pork chops and all kinds of stuff. He knew nothing about this walk of Torah. I wonder if today he was, allowed to see this, what he would have done with it. I really don't know. But that's where I came from. And so, some of these things as you're transitioning, it's not that these people were evil. It's that that's what they were taught. And I believe that the foundation that I was given by those in my early life in a physical sense, and those in my early life in a spiritual sense, that foundation was something that was allowed later on to build on. So when it comes to Rav Shaul, we need to see that this man is not our enemy. In fact, I believe he's a great friend in this walk of Torah and can teach us much. The book of Philippians is one that began actually in the book of Acts. So it began with a prayer. Yes, the book of Philippians began with a prayer. Write this down. Put this somewhere where you can kind of reference it at some point in time. Elohim, God, does nothing upon this earth without man praying. Man is dependent upon prayer to see the Father move in our lives. And the Father is dependent upon our prayer in order for us to receive and to move forward. I think that's why the enemy fights so hard against prayer. Because prayer is what connects the realms. When we, the apostles were when they asked Yeshua, teach us to pray. Our Father, who is in the heavens, the heavenly realm, holy, set apart is your name. It goes on, your kingdom come, your will be done in this earthly realm as it is in the spiritual heavenly realm. Let's take it out of the concept of it just being a place. But these are realms that are coming together. And what is it that brings the two realms together? It is our prayer. I know that's difficult for many of us to understand just how crucial prayer is. When we look at the words of Shlomo, Solomon, and the dedication of the temple in Jerusalem, he says, may anyone who stands and prays toward this place, may his prayers be answered. We see that David talked about praying toward Jerusalem, even though there was no temple there. We see that Daniel in exile in Babylon, he was praying. What does prayer do? Prayer engages us. Prayer makes us the conduit. If we would really understand this, that it is not that the Father is wanting to withhold his blessings from us. It is that he is waiting for us to ask him for those blessings. It's not that he's, kind of up there in that heavenly realm, seated upon a throne going, if they can just get that prayer right, just saying it one more time, then I'm going to know. Prayer is about when we begin to pray, then prayer begins to change us. And through that changing of who we are, it opens us up to becoming the conduit. We could see it like this. If you've ever had a piece of PVC pipe, and you want to make that's a conduit to get water from here to here. What happens if somewhere in the process of gluing it, that an animal gets down in there, a little mouse gets in there, or a piece of trash, or somebody sticks something in there. We had this happen. Somebody had done this with a septic system. They had shoveled dirt in to a septic system because the owner of the house they didn't feel had done the right thing for them. So they had to go back and they had to get that dirt out. If we can consider that what we are today is a conduit, and we have this heavenly realm, and we have this earthly realm, and we are to be the people that connect the two. But you can connect, you can have both ends connected. But if there's something in the center that's clogging it, then the water cannot flow from one to the other. And so prayer is, one of the reasons of prayer is to engage us. And as we become engaged in something, we begin to change. And we become that conduit that can freely flow that from the spiritual realm into the earthly realm. So with that, let's go to Acts chapter 16. And it talks about that Shaul is on his, what's called the second missionary journey, which I really can't stand those words. He is on his second journey of spreading the gospel, the good news of the kingdom which is coming. So he's on this journey, and it says in verse 8, so after passing by Mysia, they came down to Troas. There a vision appeared to Shaul at night. A man from Macedonia was standing and begging him, come over to Macedonia and help us. As soon as he seen the vision, we lost no time getting ready to leave for Macedonia, for we concluded that Elohim had called us to proclaim the kingdom to them. And so it goes on and says they sailed from Troas. From there we went on to Philippi, a Roman colony, which there are Jews there. There are God-fearers we're going to see, and the leading city in the part of Macedonia. So, someone, we're not told who. Interesting thing about people that pray. People that pray are normally not the ones that you see standing on a platform, standing on a stage. They are the ones that most of the time nobody really considers who they are. And take, for instance, this man that I talked about, John Faust. John had been a Sears mechanic all of his life. When's the last time that Sears, who goes to Sears anymore, it's pretty much defunct, going out, it's past, it's history in most places. But Sears was the place at one time that if you wanted a battery for your car or tires for your car, you went to Sears. The Sears diehard, prior to interstate batteries, the Sears diehard, they had done the commercials, and it was the battery of the day. Whether it was any different than any of the others, I don't know. But if you had a diehard, that was it. Most people that went to Sears in Tucson, Arizona, never imagined that the man that was putting the diehard in their car was one of the greatest prayers that I've ever met in my life. A man that when he began to pray, he began to cry. Tears would roll down his cheeks, and he would touch the heavens. He never, to the best of my knowledge, never preached a sermon. Never stood. If he was ever on the platform of the Nazarene church there in Tucson, Arizona, I never saw it. He sat in a pew and he prayed. Some unknown person in Philippi, in Macedonia, touched the heavens. And because of that, the book of Philippians is now in our possession. The early congregation that we'll talk about, maybe, I don't know if I'll get through, I may not get to verse 1 yet this week, that's okay. But someone, we're not told if they were Jew, Gentile, heathen, pagan, somebody looked up to the heavens and said, there has to be more. Send someone. Send someone to this town, to this area, that can teach us about the one who has created everything. He was pleading, and in that pleading, he touched the heavens. This vision that Shaul saw, come over to Macedonia and help us. As soon as he had seen the vision, we lost no time getting ready to leave for Macedonia. Paul, Shaul, Timothy, as is said in Philippians, in the letter, as Paul and Timothy are at that time as the mentee, I think is the word. But Shaul here, he becomes the answer to someone's prayer. Can we grasp that one? Just for a moment. This is way out of most of our thinking, because what I find is that, and maybe you're different, but the understanding that you and I are significant, Barry Phillips uses that word a lot, significant in the building of the kingdom. Have you seen yourself there? Have you seen yourself as significant in anything? You need to. The very fact that you were born right now, in this time, I've jokingly said to people, aren't you so happy pleased with yourself that you were so smart, so intelligent, so amazing in your intellect, that you chose to be born right now? Of course, that's silly. Absolutely ridiculous. Why? Because none of us had a choice. Now, I'm one of those crazies that believes that creation was 6 days, 6 literal days, 6 24-hour days, and that there has been 6,000 or so years since the creation of all things. Since he spoke the worlds into existence, there's been about 6,000 years. Today, last statistics that I heard, there's something around 7.5, 7.8 billion people on the face of the earth. There are those that believe that there was probably maybe 6 billion in the first 6,000 years, and now the growth exponentially. We really don't know those things. There's one line of thought that at the time of Noah, because of the length of the lives of people, that there could have been 5-6 billion people on the face of the earth at that time. We don't know. What we do know, what I know and what you should know is this, that out of whether it's 10 billion or 20 billion people that were born over a time period of some 6,000 years, you were born right now. I mean, not right now. You were born somewhere in the last, however many years. Probably less than 100. And you had no choice. You had no choice of when you were born. Think about that. So, who chose? Who chose? Well, the one who declared the end out of the beginning chose your birth date. Think about this. This is why I like to go back to a person's birth date and look at the Torah portion. What was the Torah portion when you were born? Do you know that? I was talking to Barry about this. This coming Torah portion, which is the blessings over the tribes. It's the Hebrews in Egypt, the last days of Jacob, and the blessings that he would give over those boys. That's Barry Phillips. That's his Torah portion. No, that's Barry Phillips. This man has an incredible heart for the whole house of Israel. My Torah portion is coming up in Exodus. It's the verses about Moses leading the children of Israel, the Hebrews, out of Egypt. It kind of fits what my general makeup is. When you were born, even to the day that you were born, was in the Father's hands. So the fact that you were born for this generation means that you have a significant purpose for this generation. Have you found that? Shaul was born at the right time for the right reason. He became the answer to someone's prayer. Moses became the answer to a group of people praying. If we will understand this, it will change the way that we approach life. I read the other day a statement. If you woke up this morning, and it's obvious that you did, okay? If you woke up this morning, then there is a purpose for your life. The question we have to ask is this: have you settled for a purpose that is less than what His purpose is? That's called slavery. I'm dealing with that in some messages in coming months. So here Shaul becomes the answer to someone's prayer. He goes to Philippi, and there he meets a woman whose name is Lydia, a dealer in fine purple cloth. That's how David Stern translates it. I personally believe that she is a dealer of the tekelet, that she is harvesting this animal, whatever that was, and she is making the dye for the tekelet threads. Of course, that's a tiny bit of speculation, but I'm going to go with it. Through her investment, it says that she was already a God-fearer. Okay? In the working, if I'm right, and there's a lot of commentaries that agree that doesn't mean that I'm right. It may mean that we're all wrong. But if we are right, and she is a dealer in the tekelet, her close proximity to something of the commandments brought her to the place of fearing Elohim. How do we approach people? A lot of times, especially during this December time period, there's this disconnect. I was talking to Kathy about this last night. Though most of the people that will be listening to me, you have not set up a Christmas tree. You've celebrated Hanukkah maybe a few days ago. This is a time frame. We're coming up to the end of December, and it's, for many people, is difficult. I don't really like to go to the store right now because it's like crazies on parade. I had to go to Walmart a couple days ago. It's like, no way, that ain't happening again. So, but for us to totally disconnect, why not engage people? I have things that, I have business dealings with people that are not necessarily, and I can't say this, well, yeah, I can. I have a guy that is duplicating our CDs. I won't tell you who or where or whatever, but he duplicates our CDs. To the best of my knowledge, when I talked to him the first time, I mean, I didn't hear anything of any religious affiliation from him. I didn't, you know, he didn't, I don't think he knew the word Torah, but I'm sending him these CDs every month for him to duplicate. I fully intend that in this work that he's doing, something's happening in his life. And that could be said, I think, in many places. If we don't disconnect with the world around us, here's a person that somehow, I don't know how, Lydia became a dealer in the Tekelet. And in the dealing of something associated with the commandments, with the covenant, she would actually end up coming into the covenant. Now, it goes on, and Shaul runs across this, it's a slave girl. It says that she had a snake spirit. I don't really, you know, I'm not Cole Davis, so I don't really go into a lot of those things. I'll let him deal with some of that. But she was predicting the future. And she earned a lot of money for her owners by telling fortunes. She was the palm reading lady, the tarot card reading person. She was into the witchcraft that was around that, and understand that this is a reality. There are familiar spirits. There are spirits that understand and can see what is happening in the spiritual realm around them and can, in a way, predict the future. We are told to not have anything to do with anyone who is involved in those things. It is beyond my comprehension how many people, even in that calling themselves in a Hebrew roots Messianic walk, have seen Harry Potter, or reading the Harry Potter novels. I've never picked one up. That doesn't make me special. That just means I don't want to do that, because I see that as totally against the scriptures. But I know people. I've been in their home and they said, well, I guess you probably wouldn't approve of this. And I remember one person, I looked at it and said, does it really matter if I approve or not? It's that God doesn't approve of that. Kind of took him back a little bit, but whatever. We are not supposed to have anything to do with that. Nor are we supposed to be afraid of the people that are involved in those things. There's a place for us to consider. People are so afraid of that. Oh, it's going to get over. No. Shaul was not afraid, because he understood the verse that says, if the same spirit that raised Messiah from the dead dwells in you, he shall quicken your mortal body. Consider that this earth, dirt body is to be filled with the presence of the same power that raised Yeshua from the dead. When's the last time that you in prayer offered your body of dirt, your body of minerals, of all these things that it takes, this body that is an earthly tent, an earthly structure? Do not confuse your body with who you are. Let me say that again. Do not confuse your body with who you are. When you when you go out and you get in your car, let's say you go to your garage, your carport, or it's outside, and you drive a truck like I do. Okay, I've got a Chevy Silverado. When I get in that Chevy Silverado, It does not make me a Chevy Silverado. I am merely a person, the man, that is getting in the truck. The truck does not define me. The truck does not make me into something. The truck is a vehicle, literally, to take me from point A to point B. To take my human body, which is the container for who I am, so it is me in the body in the truck, which is going from point A to point B. And when we will see that this shell, Shaul will call it, this tabernacle, this earthen vessel, this is not who I am. It is the person who is in me that is who I am. And that person who is in me is to be controlled by, empowered by the same Spirit that raised Messiah from the dead. Just how powerful is our walk? Are we living a little below that walk? We're going to be talking about that as we go through Philippians. So, he, Shaul, stands in front of this woman, casts out that spirit from her, and the next thing he does, he's in jail. Why? Because he has interrupted their commerce. They don't care about this woman. They were using her. Everything was fine. And all of a sudden, Shaul comes in. A friend of mine sent me a text yesterday. It says, there will be people that don't like you in life. Now, I'm going to paraphrase the text that he sent. It was one of these sayings. There will be people in life that don't like you because the spirit inside of you upsets the demons inside of them. Are you willing to not be liked by people following this world system? And to understand that the consequences may be a little different than you imagined? Shaul is, at this point in time, he's traveling with Selah. They find themselves being locked in a prison now. Poor guy. I mean, he finds himself there a lot. As we go to the book of Philippians, and it says, I'm remembering you. It may be what triggered the memory was the jail cell. He's going, I've seen these bars before. Yeah. And the last time I saw him, I was in Philippi, and wow, this happened, and then he starts, and the whole thing happens, and it ends up being a 4-chapter book. But here he is, Paul and Silas, this infamous time. They're in jail. It's after midnight. It's time to get some sleep. Not for these guys. What do we find them doing? We find them praying and singing hymns to Elohim. Somebody one time jokingly said, "What were they? What hymn were they singing?" It might have been, rescue the dying, care for the perishing, or something. No, I think it was songs of praise. It was probably, we can go out on a little limb here, they might have been singing the songs of ascent, thinking about the time that they would once again ascend the temple, the steps leading to the temple, and offer praises. Those would be the psalms that they would have been singing. They were praying, singing psalms, when all of a sudden an earthquake happened. Now, to back up, what is our reaction when we find ourselves in a prison? And we're talking about, in the last couple of Torah portions, Joseph. It's not unusual. It's not unusual for somebody that's following Elohim, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, to find themselves in a prison, is it? Because prisons have purpose. We don't like it, but prisons have purpose. Here they are. They're singing. They're worshiping. They're praising. To the point that the natural realm of the earth was affected. When's the last time that our prayers affected the natural realm? I got up this morning and found out there was an earthquake, like 4.4, in eastern Tennessee. Okay? I doubt if that had anything to do with my prayers. I would only pray that I would become that person of effectual prayer. That when I pray, it not only affects the spiritual realm, but it also affects the physical realm around me. They begin to pray. The prison doors are opened, and the jailer awoke. Here's the jailer sleeping. Okay, the last thing that he's supposed to be doing is sleeping. He can be put to death if he's caught sleeping. He sees the doors open. Now he knows in his mind that if those doors are open, prisoners leave. I mean, that's just, when's the last time that you heard of a prison, breakout and a couple of guys stayed behind? No, it just doesn't happen, right? So he knows that if those doors are open, then those men are free and those men are gone, and the very least that's going to happen to him is he's going to take their place in that cell. Somewhere between that and being executed in the streets is about to happen to him. No wonder he's afraid. And Shaul shouted out, "Do not harm yourself. We're all here." Why did he say it? Because he drew a sword. He was going to kill himself. He would rather die than be a prison guard who is now in prison with prisoners. It's one thing to be a prisoner in a prison. But if a prison guard is ever put into a prison, a cop, a police officer that commits a crime, gets put into a prison, that's a whole new level here of abuse that's going to happen. He would rather die. And so Shaul says, no. We're here, we're fine. We're staying here. And he came in, calling for lights. The jailer ran in, began to tremble and fell down in front of Shaul and Silah. Then leading them outside, he said, "Men, what must I do to be redeemed?" And they said, "Have faith, trust in Adonai Yeshua, and you will be redeemed, you and your household." Whereupon they told him and everyone in his household, the message of the coming kingdom about Yeshua. It all began with a prayer. It all began with an unknown person who began to cry out. We're not told who it was. We are not told what he was praying. We're not told any of that. Not in the book. I believe that in the day in which all of the books are opened, there will be a man or woman that will be the hero. And it will be a person of humility. A person that will be looking at this vast group of people in front of them. That is the jailer, the household of the jailer, the people of Philippi, and those that have been affected through the last 1900 plus years by the writings of Saul. This person will stand there and see the fruit of their prayers. We're not told if that person that prayed, that started this process of the vision to Saul, we're not told if that person ever saw the fruit of their prayers. But in the end, the fruit was there. You and I do not know the fruit of our prayers. We have no clue of what fruit is coming forth. To mention John again, and the picture that would be, if I could move the camera over, the picture would be of my grandmother. Those two people probably prayed for me more than anyone on this earth. Oh, there was others. There was others. I'm thinking of I won't start mentioning names. There are some of you today. I'm just the vessel. I'm just the vessel. And what I'm doing today, I believe, is empowered by those prayers and many of yours. But it's not just that I become. See, the Father has a purpose for every single one of us. He desires that each one of us would be fruitful. Some would be 30-fold. Some would be 60. Some would be 100. Some would be greater than that. But every single one of us, you are called to be fruitful. You are called to have purpose. You have the ability today to be the answer to someone's prayer. Are you making yourself available to be that answer? Saul made himself available to be the answer to an unknown person's prayer and changed a whole house, changed a whole city, affected a whole city. Why? Because he was available. It wasn't because of his great intellect. It was because he was available to be filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, the same Spirit that raised Yeshua from the dead, that empowered him. It was not his knowledge that empowered him here. It was who was living inside of him that became that power. Out of time. Hopefully next week we'll get to the book of Philippians. Until then, Shavua Tov. Have a blessed, prosperous week. Be'ezrat Hashem, God willing. See you again next week. And until then, be strong.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha Shalom.